It is long past time that we had to talk about Dragon's Lair. And it's a pretty good time to do it, too, since as I record this, we've just recently heard that there's going to be a Netflix movie starring Ryan Reynolds as Dirk the Daring. How that works, I have no idea. How do you turn a game that's all about getting yourself killed over and over in increasingly inventive ways into a feature film? Beats me. But I guess hiring the guy who played Deadpool is a good start. Anyway, what I'm really here to talk about is Dragon's Lair the game, and in particular, the amazing port of the game to the TI-99 4A by Mike Brent, a.k.a. Tursi. I'm a bit behind the curve on this, given the game came out in 2019. But better late than never, and I definitely want to do right by this game, given how well it's done by us. But first, what is Dragon's Lair, other than a really boring name for your new Western RPG? And has anyone tried to port it to 80s hardware before? I mean, this isn't a new problem after all. Well, Dragon's Lair is originally a Laserdisc arcade game based around high-quality full-motion video. It wasn't actually the first Laserdisc arcade release, that was Astron Belt, but it was the first to make a big splash outside of Japan. The game came out in '83, and at this point in history, Laserdisc still wasn't a consumer technology. Players had been around since the late '70s, but not as a consumer product. So it truly was an arcade spectacle using cool new technology in an interesting new way. And it was a huge hit. If you're interested in playing the arcade version today, incidentally, your best option is the Daphne emulator. Working on modified versions of the arcade machine itself are not particularly abundant, as widely as it's sold. It's based around a Laserdisc player that ages badly, playing an optical format that ages badly. So, emulation, including a legal means to acquire vendor-authorized asset download via Daphne, is key to its preservation. So, Dragon's Lair was a big enough arcade hit that of course the home ports are going to be just around the corner, right? This is the mid-'80s. Porting everything to everything with complete disregard for any given platform's limitations is just how we roll. All we have to figure out is how to put an interactive Laserdisc movie on, say, the Coleco ADAM, which was the first platform to attempt to port. Simple, right? Well, of course not, but we paid a lot of money for this license, so figure it out, is how I'm imagining the conversation with the developers went there. And so they did, kind of. And the result, as more systems took on Dragon's Lair over the years and as hardware evolved, was basically three distinct strategies. The first one we see is the one used on the Coleco ADAM in 1984. This version is the template for most other versions of the '80s, and what it does is take scenes from the game and translate them to platformer gameplay, which in most cases doesn't strongly resemble the original scenes, but in other cases does pretty closely. The Commodore 64 Spectrum and Amstrad CPC versions are all based on the same design from the ADAM. The NES version, while likewise a platformer, uses a completely different design, which mostly ignores the source content and seems to just want to make anyone who plays it angry that video games exist at all. So this platformer generation is our first generation of 8-bit Dragon's Lair ports. The next generational step is at the end of the '80s, when we get versions for more advanced hardware, including IBM PC, Macintosh, Atari ST, and Amiga. These get much closer to the real thing. Here the strategy is to take the arcade version's visuals but make backgrounds static as much as possible, animate as little as possible, and where necessary simply drop any scenes which can't be drawn on a static background at all. Scenes where the background itself is moving, like the fire pit scene. One problem with these versions, other than the missing scenes, is with the scenes having been reanimated, Dirk often looks less like a lo-fi version of himself than like a cut-rate imitation. The final stage, and maybe just maybe the promised land for Dragon's Lair fans, came in '93 and '94 when we got the first versions of the game that directly translate the original scenes to system-compatible FMV. Versions for Sega CD and IBM PC are first out of the starting gate here, and 3DO and CDI would shortly follow. Palette resolution, frame rate, and load times mostly are not arcade level, but the original art is preserved, crucially. And as in the 1989 versions, we even get a bonus scene that wasn't used in the arcade version, the drawbridge scene, but now as FMV. So that's a really brief version of the story so far when it comes to adapting Dragon's Lair to 80s hardware. When suddenly a wild TI-99 4A port appears, thanks to Mike Brent, who officially licensed a Dragon's Lair release for TI-99. It was planned for a release of 100-ish carts, but 155 were ultimately distributed. The price after shipping was $95 for Americans, or $120 for folks like me requiring international shipping. The game could be played on any TI-99 4A console, even consoles with the 2.2 operating system, and without a RAM upgrade. No TI-99 4s though, since the 9918A is required for bitmap mode. So, what unique decisions does it make in adapting the arcade experience for home use on 80s hardware? What new options does it give us? How successful is it in bringing FMV gaming to the TI-99 4A? And, for that matter, what's in the box? Well, first of all, let's look at the box itself. We get a corrugated box, printed on both sides, giving us two options for its appearance, as long as you're comfortable refolding it, that is. As shipped, we've got the classic Dragon's Lair art on the outside in a design based on modern-style TI-99 manuals. And on the inside, we've got a design based on the older-style TI-99 manuals. So you get your pick. We've also got 3 unused cart labels and one which has been used on the donor cart case where the board's installed. Then we've got a Dragon's Lair poster. On the back of that are explanatory notes on the game. I received 2 of these which Tursi said some but not necessarily all buyers would receive. And finally, there's a Dragon's Lair postcard with credits and licensing info. So that's what's in the box. But what's in the game? Let's start it up and take a look. One thing you'll see as we cycle through the opening sequence is that the game says it's F18A enhanced, as my TI-99 does have an F18A VDP. That being a mod that isn't currently available, but will be again we expect someday soon. So if you don't have one and you want one, do hold out hope that you will have an F18A someday. But if you don't have one and you do have Dragon's Lair, definitely don't get too worried, because as to what an F18A means for Dragon's Lair, the answer happily for folks who don't have an F18A is not all that much. Tursi did an amazing job of making the game run beautifully on unupgraded hardware. But I'll show you exactly what the difference is in practice. If we watch in super slow-mo as the main panel has new pattern and color data written here, we can see that in F18A mode, pattern and color data are always written on the same frame. Now, if we disable F18A mode by holding down Shift at start, on the other hand, and watch the panel load, we can see pattern and color data are not always being written on the same frame. So, not a huge difference by any means, but it does have a perceptible benefit. Anyway, what we were watching start to load there was the cinematic intro, and any good version of Dragon's Lair treats us to a good voiced cinematic intro. Unlike the 1989 Macintosh version.
Dragon's Lair.
Which, yeah, just yells Dragon's Lair at you and calls it a day. But let's watch it here and see how it stands up.
Dragon's Lair, a fantasy adventure where you become a valiant knight on a quest to rescue the fair princess from the clutches of an evil dragon. You control the actions of a daring adventurer finding his way through the castle of a dark wizard who has enchanted it with treacherous monsters and obstacles. In the mysterious caverns below the castle, your odyssey continues against the awesome forces that oppose your efforts to reach the Dragon's Lair. Lead on, adventurer. Your quest awaits.
And the big takeaway here for me is that it is the full intro with no attempt to reduce the file size with stills or static backgrounds. You can see how the 1993 DOS versions and Sega CD version reduce the opening shot of the castle as well as the title itself to a still, and it just annoys me a bit. In Tursi's TI-99 version, these shots are animated, as they are in the arcade version. Not much, but they're animated as they were originally, so the jarring effect of a sudden still isn't there. I'll also say that the direct capture of the F18A VGA output here really doesn't do the picture justice. The effect of all that clever dithering is far better experienced on a CRT, with the blending that provides, as I'm experiencing it here myself. Once we get into the menu, we have some important decisions to make. First, by default, hints are off, but if we want to turn them on, we can receive prompts indicating the next required action in order to learn the game. And those will look like this. But most people will probably prefer to play with them off in the long run. If we want to take it really easy, we can press D a couple times and play in practice mode. In this mode, the game will wait for you to take each action on a freeze frame. Again, just something you could do to learn the game if so inclined. That'll look like this. Most of the time, though, you'll want to decide whether to play in easy mode or in hard mode. The difference is that in easy mode, bad inputs are ignored, while in hard mode, bad inputs will more often than not result in your death. Dragon's Lair really has two types of bad inputs in its arcade version. Many bad inputs result in your death, but it varies from action to action, and in a few cases, like the Bower scene, there are no wrong inputs at all which can result in your death, and you can really just button mash to your heart's content. I've tested intentional bad inputs in a few scenes, and Tursi's Dragon's Lair in hard mode seems to me to match the arcade version's handling of invalid inputs for all the cases I've tried. Which makes sense, as it seems to me he based his sequencing on the excellent resources at DragonslayerProject.com, which I've likewise come to really appreciate. Anyway, there's a legitimate case for using either of these two modes, so it's nice to have both of them. Use hard mode if you're looking for an arcade-accurate challenge, or use easy mode if you've got an itchy sword finger and you wish it would just be ignored once in a while. Your next big decision in the menu here is sequence. What this decides for you is the order and selection of the scenes in the game, and the reason for this distinction is that the original arcade order is pretty freaking arbitrary, and doesn't feature the opening drawbridge scene at all. In home scene order, you'll always begin with the drawbridge scene, followed by the vestibule scene, which just makes sense. You start by entering the castle, and arrive in an entrance room. Logical. In arcade order, you have a 2/3 chance of playing the fire pit scene first, in one of its two mirrored variations. Home order also includes only one version of each of those mirrored scenes in a playthrough, rather than both versions, so it's a little less repetitive. And finally, in home sequencing, if you fail twice, you will always progress past a scene anyway, so it's just a little kinder that way. Another thing I'd like to take a look at here is load time, which was definitely a concern for the early FMV ports of this game. You can see that there's a pretty long seek time and load time between the scenes in my Sega CD version here. Meanwhile, the 1993 DOS CD-ROM uses the weird approach of showing you how many lives you have left after every single scene. I guess to fill the seek and load time void with something. I recorded this gameplay on a system with a bad old double-speed CD-ROM, so that's period-accurate seek time, too. But how about the TI-99 version? Well, as far as that load time goes, nope, there isn't one. Obviously, there's no seek time without optical media, but there isn't any load time either. For a death animation, it's the 6 frames it takes in F18A to write pattern and color data and fill that panel. And the load time for a new scene is the 6 frames it takes to black out the panel, followed by the 6 frames it takes to write the new scene to it. So you better be ready for the next scene, because it's coming at you fast. Faster than the arcade version, actually. So this has been an overview of Dragon's Lair on the TI-99 4A. Though the cart's no longer being produced and likely will not be again due to the challenges of licensing, the carts that exist out there in the community will continue to be loved for a long time to come, particularly because it's just such a playable version of the game. It is not just a tech demo, it is an awesome version of Dragon's Lair. To close things out here, I'll just leave you with a full playthrough of the game on easy mode with home scene sequencing. Thanks for watching, and thank you to Tursi for this wonderful product.
Please save me. The cage is locked with a key. The dragon keeps it around his neck. To slay the dragon, use the magic sword. Please save me. The cage is locked with a key. The dragon keeps it around his neck. To slay the dragon, use the magic sword. The cage is locked with the key. The dragon keeps it around his neck. To slay the dragon, use the magic sword.
Dragon's Lair, the fantasy adventure where you become a valiant knight on a quest to rescue the fair princess from the clutches of an evil dragon. You control the actions of a daring adventurer finding his way through the castle of a dark wizard who has enchanted it with treacherous monsters and obstacles. In the mysterious caverns below the castle, your odyssey continues against the awesome forces that oppose your efforts to reach the dragon's lair. Lead on, adventurer. Your quest awaits.